Hi, welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. Today I'm chatting with Allie, owner and founder of Blissd. Her unexpected journey through postpartum depression with her firstborn led her to therapy, medication, and journaling for self-care. She turned this passion for journaling specifically into a product designed for busy, overwhelmed parents. Let's hear from Allie. Hello. Today I'm here with Allie. Allie, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Chelsea.
Of course. I'm so excited that we connected. You are the founder and owner of Blissd, which is a journaling experience that you created through your postpartum journey. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit, but I'll start how I start all my episodes. How about you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you were before you became a mom?
Sure. So I'm originally from Chicago, which I'm very proud about, but I've lived in Los Angeles for the past 11 years. I've gone through a lot of growth here. This is where I met my now husband. This is where I've had my two babies. I have a 4-year-old. My son is 4 and my daughter is 2. And this is also where I've gone through a lot of transformation in the career space, first working in a completely different industry prior to having my son. I was working in travel and now shifting majorly into the e-com kind of wellness lifestyle space with my own business. Having my own business has always been a dream of mine. That's something that before becoming a mom was a dream of mine. After becoming a mom, still a dream of mine. So I'm excited to be working on it. And who I was before becoming a mom, gosh, that's a great question. I think I was just living a life that I didn't realize was as wonderful as it was.
Right?
Yeah, just the freedom that comes with, the kid-free life. That being said, obviously, having kids is just as wonderful, and I could not imagine my life without my babies. But yeah, I think just kind of not truly embracing that freedom that I had was who I was before I was a mom.
Yeah. That's a common response. And it's also like, wow, who was I? I don't even know who that person is anymore.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah. What sort of things bring you joy? What sort of things fill your cup?
My kids, for sure. I'm sure that's a common answer. Reading, I really enjoy reading all types of books. Being outside. We live in Los Angeles, which is, a really beautiful place. Going to the ocean, going on hikes, spending time with my family, seeing my friends. I love an early happy hour or dinner. Like that is something that really brings me joy. Coming home by 8 or 9 p.m. Also brings me joy. Getting in bed, getting a good night of sleep, waking up feeling great. Journaling, which is a huge part of my life, and obviously what my business is based around. And I would say kind of self-care and personal development. I'm really big on kind of each day doing something little for myself that will, help me personally, help me in motherhood, help me in my career.
Which is so good. It's it's something that a lot of us are working on. So it makes me happy to hear that that's something that you're consistent with.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. And it's, going back to your first question, self-care has changed so much for me. That's actually a good answer to your first question too. What self-care has changed so much for me since becoming a mom. Before becoming a mom, it was the massages, pedicures, manicures, all the outer stuff. And now since becoming a mom, it is really focused on anything from within that's going to help me feel good. With the pedicures and manicures and massages, still playing a little bit of a part, but not as much as pre.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to get those in when you've got kids running around.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about your journey into motherhood, starting with, did you always sort of picture yourself being a parent? Is that something that you always wanted?
It was. I definitely always wanted to be a mom. Yeah, I think the answer there is the hard yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sort of thought maybe I'd be a stay-at-home mom a little bit. It was like this weird kind of, because I grew up with a stay-at-home mom. So that's, I think was just imprinted in my mind, but I actually didn't want that.
Mm.
So I guess that's been maybe interesting, like the type of mom I thought I would be. But no, definitely always knew that I wanted to be a mom.
So what did that journey look like for you?
Um, we had my son in 2019. It was planned, like we were trying. And when I got pregnant, there were definitely a lot of feelings, mainly excitement, but also a little bit of that, oh gosh, we are actually likely doing this. And my my pregnancy, I really enjoyed being pregnant. Yeah, generally I felt pretty good with my son during pregnancy. And I really enjoyed it. And then my postpartum experience with my son was really challenging. I had postpartum depression, which I think I was sort of surprised by, but at the same time, I was like, I knew I was maybe at a little bit of a, that I was more susceptible to it. So I'm looking back now, surprised that I didn't prepare myself a little bit more, but at the same time, it's your first. You don't totally know how to prepare yourself. And I mean, the postpartum really knocked me down. And I just remember, oh, yeah, I just remember a lot of really challenging nights, asking friends if it was normal. I had one friend who had postpartum, so I really leaned on her. Because I just didn't know. You hear so much like things are common or things are normal. My dad's a doctor. So he was like, see your doctor, what are you waiting for? And I was lucky. I asked my doctor at like 5 or 6 weeks. I was like, I don't think this is normal. She agreed. She got me on medicine right away. And honestly, that helped. And I was in therapy as well. That made such a difference. And I did feel like the medicine, once I got on it, was, even though they say, it takes a month or so to kick in, I felt an improvement after a week or so.
Wow.
And then started, seeing, I was in therapy on the medicine. I had more support around me. And things did start to feel a little bit better.
Yeah. You had mentioned sort of being a little bit surprised that you weren't more prepared. Did you have any sort of mental health struggles prior to your postpartum struggles?
No, I didn't, but I am, I have some highly sensitive traits.
Okay.
And I feel like just there is some mental health in my family background. So knowing that, and at the time, actually, on the highly sensitive side, I didn't really, that's just recently that I learned about like highly sensitive people and have started identifying with some of those traits. At that time, I didn't really know about it. But yeah, I would say just having like a background with mental health running in my family sort of probably increased the likelihood.
Yeah, and that's a common theme that I hear. A lot of our birthing people say is like, I should have known, or I should have seen this coming, and you can't. You really can't, because every pregnancy and every postpartum experience is so different. So I don't want you to get down on yourself for maybe like not mentally preparing, but
Thank you.
yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yes.
And that's the reason that we're here talking about it, is
Yep.
because you don't know. They're not talking about it. They're not telling you about it.
My story helps one person. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I know it will. I absolutely know it will.
But one thing I want to add on kind of where I was mentally, like when I was pregnant and planning my postpartum, my husband was in a job that they gave him a couple weeks off for, parental leave. And then we also live in the state of California, where we're so lucky. Everyone gets 8 weeks mothers, fathers, of some paid leave from the state as long as you paid into it. And so in my head, I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, my husband will take a week off after the baby to help, and then we can save those 8-9 weeks he has for later on to like travel and, all this stuff. Like, that's where my head was at. I didn't want my mom to come out and stay. She did come out for, I think, almost 2 weeks, but I was past my due date. So by the time my son actually got here, she only had like 4 days to help.
Oh.
I didn't want anyone in my space because I really like my space, my time. I thought I would want to be by myself because usually I do really enjoy being by myself in my non-postpartum life.
Yeah.
And I think that also really shocked me. Like, I was like, wow, I want people around. I want more support. I want like the day-to-day help that I didn't think I'd really want.
That I'm very similar to you in that I like to be in my space, my safe space, and like I don't like people coming into it. And it really is shocking how that saying, like, it takes a village, how much that rings true as soon as baby's born.
Yeah, very true.
Oh my goodness. So how did you initially sort of come to the realization that this wasn't baby blues or like the typical like hormone drop and it maybe was something more?
I mean, I did keep thinking it was baby blues. And, I remember I had trouble nursing as well. That was a really challenging experience. And, they do tend to put a lot of pressure on you to keep going, keep trying. So I don't think that helped my mental state. But I remember going to the lactation consultant on day 3. And I mean, crying, like really, really upset. And she's like, day 3 is the hardest. It's one of the harder days. So I was getting this feedback kind of, it's still really, that was day 3. So it was still really early, but it's still really early, hormones, all this stuff. And I was really questioning in those first few weeks, is it baby blues? Because you hear a lot about baby blues and there is some, it's kind of hard to distinguish, especially that early on. There is some overlap and stuff. So I just didn't really know and just rely, talking to my dad, talking to my friend who had postpartum and also went on medicine. They were both just like, why not just, call the doctor and see what she did? Like, there's no harm in that. And so then that's what I did. And now looking back, I had my daughter in 2021. Oh my God, such a completely different postpartum experience. Completely different, like in the best way possible. The knowledge that you gain in retrospect and stuff, or in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, it was just day 3 with my daughter was not a teary-eyed day. It was a really like magical day. And I remember coming on to day 3 with my daughter and being like, oh, the lactation consultant said this is one of the hardest days because this is when most of the hormones drop, et cetera, et cetera. And, it was not the same day that I had with my son.
I love hearing that. I also I always try to acknowledge that like, it's not always like that, but it's also important to recognize and realize that every single pregnancy and postpartum journey is so different, even from one child to the next to the next. And I think the hardest part about it is that there's no way of predicting it.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So just because it doesn't mean that your experience with your son, just because he was your first, that's why you got postpartum depression. Mm-hmm. It very easily could have been flip-flopped, or you could have had fabulous experiences with both kids. And I think that's what makes it so scary for a lot of people who are considering having kids.
I will say I went on the medicine with my son, and was on it for about 6 months. Then I went off because I was feeling good, worked with my doctor on kind of weaning it. And then COVID hit. And
Mm-hmm.
slowly with COVID, I felt the depression creeping back up. And just, I mean, that was just an isolating time for everyone. My husband and I were working in jobs that were impacted by COVID. There was a lot of stress on everyone during that time. So I ended up going back on the medicine. I was at the doctor for I think my doctor for like my post-year checkup, and they have you fill out that form. And I remember writing on the
Yes.
form, like, I think my PPD or some type of depression is coming back up. They took me right into the doctor's office, spoke with the doctor. He's like, let's get you, back on the medicine if you want. I wanted to. And so this was summer of 2020, and my daughter was born in July of 2021. I ended up staying on the medicine her entire pregnancy and postpartum with her for about 6 months. So, that also could have
Yeah.
impacted and made a really positive difference.
For sure. And it's so good that you recognize that in yourself. And I'm so happy to hear that your doctor's office took it so seriously
Yeah,
and
they
was
did.
so proactive about it.
They did.
That survey, if you said you listened to Sandy's episode, that survey has been
Yep.
the same survey
Yeah.
forever and ever and ever and ever. And it's tricky because it can be confusing and you can misinterpret the what they're asking, but it sounds like it's changing, which is,
I mean, I had written on the survey, I think
yeah,
something is up. Like, it wasn't just I answered the questions and then waited. I answered the questions and then said something's off.
right. And
So
you recognize that in
yeah.
yourself, which is amazing.
But they also did, I mean, speaking to the survey after I had my daughter, July of 2021, they have you fill out that survey. At least my hospital did, immediately post birth and stuff. And I filled it out. And I think there were some questions that it made them a little concerned, like, okay, are you okay? Da-da. And they did ask me. So I think it also probably depends maybe on the doctor or the
Yeah.
hospital because they did take note and they were like, okay, we have to address this because there are some answers that you provided that are a little bit on the cusp. Like, let's talk about this.
That's amazing. Because yeah, that's not the story that I get from a lot of the people that I chat with. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are no longer on the medication anymore, but you're feeling really good.
Yeah, no longer on the medication, about, I think, a year and a half off of it. Feeling like myself.
Which is so good.
Yeah, I definitely, I know it's there. I know I can call the doctor if I need it. When I went off of it initially, I do undiagnosed think I have that PMDD, which is like around your menstrual, your period, getting a little bit more signs of depression than most people do. Again, I'm aware of it, but there have been some moments in the past around that time where I'm like, ooh, this is kind of rough.
Yeah. Was that a difficult decision for you to make to go on the medication, or was that kind of like a no-brainer?
I want to say it was a little bit like a no-brainer, but I think, especially being in LA, or it might not even just be in LA, but there is this like, no medicine, no medicine. So I think that was maybe a little bit in my head, but intuitively, like, once I listened to myself, it was a no-brainer.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I don't know if it's just, I mean, I think you're right. The atmosphere in LA is very, I mean, I've never been, but our perception of it over here on the East Coast is it's very like crunchy and natural and like,
Yep.
yeah. So I 100% get that, but there's also a stigma just associated with any sort of medication for mental health. So I know that it can be a little bit tricky to be like, oh God, do I go on this? What is my family going to think? What is my partner going to think?
Or how long do I, is this going to be my life?
Is this forever?
Right.
Yes.
Right,
yes. Sure. But what I have learned through my postpartum journey and mental health journey is that it's a tool. It's a tool to help you access the tools that you have anyway. So you recognizing in yourself like, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer. I'm not where I need to be, and this is going to help me get to where I need to be.
Yeah.
You are just an amazing self-advocate.
Oh, thank you. I will give props to my one friend because she had a baby a year before me. She had, the PPD. She went on medicine. So she did maybe also influence. Like, I don't know what it would have been like had I had friends who had those challenges and did not choose to go on medicine. Like, would have been influenced in that way? Or would that have made me kind of second guess things? So I feel like in my community, like, people do what you need to do, and that also helps.
Well, that kind of leads perfectly into one of my other questions. What was your support network like back then? Like, even including friends and family. And I guess a part 2 to that question is, other than this one friend that had experienced it, was postpartum mental health something that was discussed in your sort of community at all?
So my support system then, my husband, but working full time, we don't have family nearby. My family's in Chicago, his is abroad in Europe. But we have a very strong friend community. That being said, most of my friends at that time were also first-time moms, a little further ahead than me. And the ones that weren't, I feel like you don't totally understand it if you're not in it. But I feel like my friends were very supportive. I don't know if it was in my like mom group did chat about it, but I think since many of my friends didn't experience it, then it's just harder to relate to or understand or connect with, like, because just don't know.
Yeah.
But I would say when I brought it up with any friend, all of my friends were like, it's okay if you have to go on medicine or do what you have to do, like, very supportive in that sense of like, Allie, just talk to your doctor.
Yeah. That's good. That's so good that they were supportive of you getting help.
For sure. Yeah.
Were you, other than talking to your doctor, were you aware of any resources that were available to you, like specific to postpartum mental health?
Just through my doctor, who recommended a therapist that I really liked, because part of it, I think, in my pregnancy and in my pre-mom days, I really enjoyed working out. And throughout pregnancy, working out was a huge part of, feeling good. And then, of course, they say, like, you shouldn't work out for 6 weeks after. I think I went into my doctor around week 4.5 or 5. I don't remember exactly. And she gave me permission to, like, start gentle exercises early because she thought that would help since it was such a huge part of my life before. And then she also recommended a therapist it was a talk therapist, but she did her sessions walking on the beach, which was really, you could bring your baby because most moms don't have, we're home. You don't have, if you don't have family nearby or a babysitter that early on. And so I really liked that therapist. I really liked that experience. I had to pay out of pocket, which was, a challenge for sure if you want to see them on a weekly basis kind of thing. But my husband recognized that, like, that wasn't even, we were so lucky to be in a position where we could pay out of pocket, even if it kind of hurt a little bit having to do so.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate. That's another thing that's so hard is getting support specific for postpartum mental health issues. If you don't have insurance or if you, like, it's not covered under certain insurance.
I don't think a lot are anymore.
No. And it's different all over the country, I'm learning. But I think I said this in another episode, but we're sort of seeing the infancy of these breakthroughs in terms of recognition for mental health disorders. And I think in terms of postpartum specific, we're getting a little bit more recognition lately, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. And to hear that you had to pay out of pocket, I'm so glad you were able to do that. And oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Like the walking on the beach therapy and like, and your baby's with you too. So
Yeah.
you're also like, you're getting those bonding moments as well. But yeah, just access to that stuff is so limited.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it was all through my doctor. She like gave me a list and then circled the one she thought I would really like vibe with and stuff. But I agree. Otherwise, it's like going to Google or,
Yeah.
your friends, your network. But if no one in your network has had to go like use that type of support, then you don't have those recommendations.
Yeah, I'm kind of loving your doctor.
Yeah. She was great. She no longer practices, but she was awesome.
Did you have the same doctor when you had your daughter?
I didn't, and I was so bummed. I had to switch because it was COVID, and then my original doctor's office ended up closing because I think the main doctor was retiring, and my doctor, who I think is now practicing again, but I think there was a health scare in her family, so I think she took like an extended leave of absence. And at that time, I was pregnant with my second, so I needed to find a new doctor.
Yeah. Oh, bummer, because you had such a good experience.
Yeah, I did.
So you were seeing an amazing therapist. You were seeing an amazing doctor. You had a great group of friends. Holy cannoli, were you set up for success? I'm loving what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
What other ways did you find to sort of cope through those really, really scary, tough weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the other tool that I used in part, thanks to my therapist, was journaling, which I had never, I journaled in like middle school, elementary school, the kind of dear diary, I don't know if he likes me type of journal. But I had never really like been a consistent, regular journaler. And my therapist thought it could be useful just as a way to get everything that was kind of spinning in my head out, and also as a way to write down anything that might come up during the week that I could then, if I wanted to, bring to our next session. And I really discovered a love for journaling during that time. I think it was medicine for sure. I think that's number one, the therapy, and then the journaling. I will say, 4 years into this, no longer on the medicine, but the journaling is still a big part of my life and like the 5 minutes I give to myself most days of the week. So it has had such an impact then, but also now into motherhood and stuff is like my tool for self-care.
Yeah, it's something that you've been able to take with you through the whole journey.
Yep.
So how did you take that form of therapy, self-therapy, and turn it into a business? Yeah.
I mean, I think for anyone listening who's like, oh, wow, was thinking business ideas during that time. As I said, like at the start of the podcast, I've always wanted to have my own business. So that's just, I think, how my brain has worked, like always kind of looking out for ideas and never feeling like I had the right one. So just for anyone, like that is my mindset, like, ooh, business. So I was in this exploratory phase of journaling at the start of my postpartum, and just doing all different types of journaling, using all of the popular journals, using blank notebooks, and just couldn't find one that I felt was the right fit for me as a mom. The blank notebooks were a little bit overwhelming. Like, oh, what do I do with the blank page? I'm supposed to write 3 pages of thoughts a day. And then on the other end of it, some of the popular, more guided notebooks were a little too structured. Some of them are like, you use twice a day, morning and night. Some of them are, specific to morning, specific to night. And it just felt too rigid for me. Like I didn't really know when I could fit it in, especially during those early days. And so I just started in a blank notebook, writing down a really simple format, which was like getting all of my thoughts onto paper, then writing down what I was grateful for, and then ending with something that I was excited for or something I was manifesting. And I wrote in a blank notebook that format for, years, 2.5 years. And I think it was that format, just having that simple format that helped me maintain this journaling practice. And then I was like, the business hat goes on, and I was like, this is actually the idea. Like, this is it. This is the business. So I turned that journal into my first journal. And it's that format that I started in a blank notebook that anyone could do in a blank notebook, of course. But my journal then has like the inspiration I wanted from a guided journal in the form of like quotes and affirmations and prompts you can use if you want to answer a prompt one day. And yeah, that's sort of the story of how it was born.
Yeah, I checked out your website and I checked out the journals and I love the format. I think what I like the most about them is that it's not something that you have to dedicate a huge amount of time to, but you also feel like you've gotten something out of it when you're finished. So I'm like you, I'm super overwhelmed by like the blank journals or the bullet journals. Like some people go crazy with like different designs in the bullet journals and stuff. And I'm like, how do you have time? Where's the time for that? And B, like, which ones do you use? Which ones are right for you? So yeah, what I like about your journals is that they're simple. They're very clear and easy to follow, and it's not going to take you 30-40 minutes to sit down and complete a journal entry.
Thank you. I mean, you just said in a nutshell kind of what I feel like really are the standout things about my journals as well, and that is that they're easy to use, simple, and flexible. Like they are meant to fit into your life.
Yeah, and you have one for the individual, but now you also have one for families as well, right?
Yeah, I recently launched that. I guess it's not so recent anymore. This past spring, I launched that one. And the story behind that is during COVID, my husband and I started a really simple gratitude practice at the dinner table. We'd eat dinner with my son, who was at the time, around 1 year old. He obviously he couldn't understand what it was, but we involved him in the process. Just my husband and I each night saying something we were grateful for, or something good that happened that day. And then with time, he began to understand. And I like to emphasize that it was a lot younger than I think some people would think. Like, I think he was around 2-ish when he started, Luca, what are you grateful for? Mama. Actually, he'd never say mama. He usually says dada.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and it was very cool to see that kind of click in his head. And then as he got older, we continued this practice, and he had some really cool answers where I was like, this would be very, like, I'd love to remember this. And so that's how that journal was born. As a way to teach and practice gratitude within your family, but then it also is a really special memory book just to remember the smaller things that happen on a day-to-day basis that you might forget. I
wonder too if someday he'll be interested in that as well, and your daughter, if you're doing, because I mean, I was the same way, like you were saying earlier. Like I would journal in middle school and high school, and it was so angsty, and it was so silly. But I have those things, and I can look back on those things and remember who I was and where I was in those times, and not only with your like personal journals, but with your family journals, you're creating that opportunity. So even when if you're in the thick of it and things are really, really hard, you can sort of go back to that later and be like, oh my God, I got through that.
Yes. Yeah. Very true.
Like I did that.
Yeah.
I did that. And then, and your kids one day, I'm thinking like for us, for our generation, it was baby books. Our parents did baby books. And I was always like, I want to see my baby book. Yes, and so now I'm picturing your kids being like, I want to see our journals. I want to get out our old journals.
Yeah, I hope so. That's definitely, I mean, That's the vision for sure. I started a baby book with my son. I don't know if I ever officially finished it, and I just have not even done one with my daughter. Like,
No, I had like a calendar for my oldest where you would like put all the firsts in the calendar. I have no idea where it is. I guess, but it's gone. I don't know where it is. I'm sorry to my oldest. With my youngest, so my oldest is 8 and my youngest is 16 months today.
Oh.
So I did a thing, which I can't say I wish I would have known about it sooner. I'm glad that I know about your journal now because I want to start doing this with both my kids. But what I did with my youngest is there's an app called Keepsake, and they'll text you a question every day and you answer the question, and then at the end they put it in a book.
Oh, I love that. That's really
right.
Cool.
I was like, I do not have the time or the mental capacity to make a baby book, but I can answer a text message.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that was, I guess I'm putting a little like, check out Keepsake. It's not with a K, it's with a Q.
I wonder how long is the book? Could you just do it throughout?
You could do it as long as you want.
Wow. That is
And
cool.
you can start it like, I have it for my oldest too. But for my youngest, I did it for her first year. And then I printed the book for her first birthday and had everyone that came to her first birthday sign it. So
that's a great idea.
Right. I mean, I have no idea how I came across it, but it was one of those things.
They need probably a sponsor for your podcast.
That would be really cool.
Episode, yeah.
Yeah. Keepsake, hit me up. But it's another one of those things. Like, I think that's the reason that I like that is the same reason that I really like your mission for your journals is because it's easy and it's simple and it's something that you don't have to think too hard about, but it's cathartic and it's, and it's something that you can look back on later.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of like self-care and mental health, is it your kiddos are still pretty young, but how do you approach those topics with them? Is it something that you talk about with them, or is it more of a general, like, we're doing our journaling and we're doing our gratitude practices?
I don't necessarily talk to them about self-care and mental health, but I do integrate it into our daily life as much as possible, with our journals. I have my kids, I say affirmations with them usually before bed. And it's really sweet. I don't know if you've done this with your kids, but hearing like your little 4-year-old say like, I am smart is just the most amazing thing ever. Sometimes they ask for it, both with the journal and with the affirmations, which is cool. And again, we don't do this every single night because life. These are things that I try to do on a regular basis when we go outside, looking up at the sky, like really like pointing out nature and stuff, because I think that that's really grounding and can just make you feel, I don't know, it's really amazing if you look up at the sky and like have a moment and you're like, wow, the world is so big. And working out, like movement, getting our exercise in, going on walks and stuff. So I think it's just something we try to build into our life, but we don't necessarily like talk about it yet. It's trying to make it a part of like our routine and their routine that hopefully as they get older, they continue to do these things or want to continue to do these things. Yeah,
by normalizing them, it's just going to become like habit, second nature.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to say on that front, we also, which I know all the parenting experts like say this is important, but we also like let them feel their feelings and talk about their bad days, and especially before we use our journal. Like if there's something, we don't want to use our journal in a place where they're like in a bad mood or like burying their feelings. So that's one other thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it kind of guides into the next question a little bit, which was if when they're older, so it's hard to imagine right now, your kiddos are so little. My oldest is approaching the preteen and teen years. So eight is rough, man. I keep saying it doesn't get easier, it just gets different. But so thinking ahead to the future and maybe like their teen years and their young adult years, if they were sort of to approach you and be like, Mom, I'm really struggling. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why I'm feeling these things. What would you sort of want them to know, or how would you approach that with them?
I mean, I'd probably tell them about my struggles too and normalize it and give them the tools that they need to get the help, the resources, let them know medicine is okay, let them know I'm there for them, to come, continue to come to me. Yeah, I think those are the things I would do.
Yeah. It sounds like you guys have a really great, just sort of self-care and checking in approach to life anyway. So I have no doubt in my mind that your kids are going to feel safe coming to you with these things.
I hope so. I mean, those teen years definitely scare me. Both my husband and I we want them to come to us.
Yeah. I think it's a product of, and I'm assuming I'm grouping us into the same like elder millennial generation. Yeah. But I think it's sort of like a product of our generation that we want to be the parents that you can say, Mom, I'm at a party and I don't feel safe. Please come get me. Rather than, Jessica, I need to stay at your house. I don't want Mom to know. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Completely agree.
And I'm just, like I said, I just met you today, but just from reading about everything that you're doing and talking to you, I get the feeling that your kids are gonna be able to do that, are gonna feel safe saying, Mom, things are crazy, come get me.
Let's check in what, 10 years?
Yeah, and see if that's true. Yeah. Maybe I've got my rose-colored glasses on.
But no, I agree, and I that is something that is important to me, and I definitely hope that is something that we continue with and stuff.
Well, even just hearing you say that you are going to be willing to talk to them about your own mental health struggles, like that's such a hard thing to do. Like, I mean, our parents weren't talking to us about these things. So many of my guests are like, I don't even know if this was a thing when my parents had me or when my grandparents had me, because they don't talk about it. And I'm like, oh, it was definitely a thing, but you're right. Nobody talked about it. Right. So that's why we're left feeling like, what is this? Is this normal? Why am I feeling like this?
Completely trying to change the conversation.
Yes, for sure. I guess on that note, thinking back to your whole journey into parenting, so your first experience and your second experience, if you were to sort of send a message to our listeners who may be in the thick of it, who may be on the other side of it, what sort of message would you want them to take away from your experience?
I guess the main one is medicine is okay, for anyone who might be, questioning that. I think the next one is fed is best, because I think I didn't really go into it, but I do think that the breastfeeding challenges I had with my first and really trying to stay with it, also impacted, the experience and made everything so much harder, worse, et cetera. Whereas with my daughter, I introduced formula a lot earlier and it saved my sanity.
Yeah.
And lean on your network, those that you trust and love. Find the little practices that you can do, the easy, simple ones that you can do as much as possible, because I think that those are going to help ground you and be those little moments that you get to yourself.
Yeah, which is important, finding those moments for yourself. Because you're a whole person. You're not just somebody's mom.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
Which feels like you're just somebody's mom. To the whole world, I'm Lily's mom. I'm
I
Avery's
love
too
the name Lily.
Thank you. Avery's too young right now. But yeah, it's Lily's mom, Lily's mom. Like, I have a name.
Yeah, yeah, very true.
I'd love to know, what are some of your favorite parts about being a mom?
I love just watching them grow and learn and how they take in information. I just like, and now I'm blanking on kind of stories or examples to share, but just things that they say where I'm like, wow, you know this? Like, where did you
Yeah.
learn that? Or how did you learn that? Or it's just very, very cool to see. Yeah, I would say that that is one of my favorite parts, just really seeing the world through their eyes, seeing how they learn and grow. My daughter kind of learning from my son, because my son is older, has been really fun to see. And just their little personalities come out as I feel like their personalities, some people probably have different opinions, but I feel like their personalities when they were a baby, it's now just getting stronger and stronger as they get older. My daughter is super silly and goofy, and it just, I think as she gets older, she becomes more silly. Um, yeah.
I love that. And I ask that because, like, sort of going along with what you would want people to take away from your journey, you experienced something that was really, really hard. And at the time, you didn't realize how common it was. And it is really common. But you came out the other side and you can talk about the ways that you enjoy being a mom.
Yes, for sure.
Right. So I just feel like I always try to reiterate to my listeners, like, even if you are in a really dark place right now and it feels like you're never going to be good enough, or it's never going to feel right, or it's never going to feel normal, it's not true. It may not be it won't be perfect. None of us are perfect, but
Right.
you're going to find things that you love about being your child's mom.
For sure. Yeah.
And you also got to sort of create a business out of something that helped you through those dark times. So this journey has taken you to some pretty cool places.
Yeah, I definitely feel that I've found my purpose. This is my second go at having a business. And the first one I started in 2015, I quickly realized was not for me. But again, just speaking to that kind of like entrepreneurial drive that I've always had, this does feel like the right path. And it is sometimes you read like you find your path through your darkest places. And that certainly feels like the case in my instance.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm not a huge fan of the term like silver linings, because I feel like sometimes that will sort of like diminish what you went through. But I do believe that our journeys take us to where we need to be.
I
And
agree.
yours most certainly has. I'm excited to share your website and your products with our listeners.
Thank
I'm
you.
excited I am definitely going to be ordering. I still can't decide which one I want, one for me or the one for my family, but I'm excited to share your work because it's perfect for our moms and our dads. And I guess that sort of brings us full circle. So I will ask you what I ask all of my guests at the end of every session. And it is this: if you could go back in time before you had your first, and you can't tell yourself what you're going to experience, you can't tell yourself sort of where your journey is going to take you, but you can instill yourself with something. It could be a mantra, it could be a feeling, it could be, I say, like, you arm yourself with something. What would you arm yourself with?
Maybe speaking to what you had just said earlier, like keep going. That's kind of my mantra through business, through life. There are the highs and the lows, the ebbs and the flows, and to keep going because there will be another side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
That's kind of taking into account everything I can't tell myself take the medicine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's taking all that into account. Like,
Yeah, just no, I love that. And I get a different answer every time. So I'm always really curious, but I love keep going is it's so on brand for you because it's a very simple phrase, right?
yeah.
But for you it's incredibly powerful. And for a lot of people going through any sort of mental health challenge, that's so powerful. Just keep going. You're
Keep
not
going with
going
the
to
support in place.
Yes. Like you're not going to want to, you're not going to feel like you can, but just keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's perfect. So with that, I want to thank you so much for connecting with me, and I'm so glad that we had this opportunity and that I'm going to have the opportunity to share your work with my listeners and yeah, just thank you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, Chelsea, and letting me share my story with your listeners. I hope that, it resonates with one person. That would be amazing, and just, yeah, to keep going. But I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you again to Allie for your authenticity and vulnerability in sharing your postpartum journey. I'm really looking forward to journaling again, and I'm excited to share your work with our listeners. If you want to follow along with us on Quiet Connection, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Quiet Connection or at Quiet Connection Podcast. You can support our community by writing a review on your favorite podcast platform or by sharing our episodes on social media. You could also consider becoming a Patreon member and gain access to things like bonus content, ad-free listening, and goodies in the mail once a month. If you'd like to share your personal journey, you can reach us through our website, quietconnectionpodcast.com, or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.